Hi, and welcome to this edition of Coach's Corner. My name is Mark. I'm going to be the host for today. Our topic today is sprint training in track cycling. We can also cover some general sprint training as well, but I've got a special guest here with me today. I've got Beicio Cymru's pathway coach, Rachel Draper, who specialises in sprint. Is that right? The sprint
Yeah,
coach?
I'm the sprint coach. So yeah, I cover everything from like our youth program all the way through to our senior riders.
Excellent. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to pass straight over to you. You have a presentation to share. Then we'll open it up for some Q&A. Over to you, Rachel.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for coming on the call. I hope it'll be useful for you. I guess it's like a pretty broad brief. This is around sprint training and cycling, and I'm sure everyone's on the call for different reasons, hoping to get different things out of it. So there's quite a lot I'm looking to cover in this. I won't go into like massive detail on each slide because I don't want to keep everyone here like all night. But basically, I'm happy to answer and expand on anything in more detail. So yeah, obviously we've got the Q&A at the end, and we can have a discussion there. So yeah, just if you have any questions at all or want me to talk about anything further, yeah, we can do that at the end anyway. So some of you guys I know and some of you I don't. So I guess this is a little bit about me and how I kind of got into the coaching. So I've been sprint coach here at Beicio Cymru since 2020 now. Before that, I was a sprint cyclist myself. So I'm a non-traditional route into the sport. So I actually started on the velodrome when I was 23, hadn't been to a velodrome before that. So yeah, really late compared to most people starting. And then I trained for about 18 months before I got picked up by British Cycling then, who invited me to come and try out on the tandem. So yes, I moved up to Manchester and started piloting there. 2014, I won 2 world titles on the tandem and then competed doing that for a few years before moving back to then racing on my solo bike. And then I represented Great Britain at European champs and World Cups and then rode 2 Commonwealth Games for Wales as well. So it's a bit about me as a cyclist. I retired in 2018 then after the Commonwealth Games, and I started doing a bit of coaching in like our club sessions, just felt like I wanted to stay involved. And then eventually a job came up in like the development department for Welsh cycling. So I started with that, working with all the clubs before, moving into the sprint coaching. And then since I've been in this role, we've been really fortunate. Sprint program has grown and grown. But we've had multiple national titles, European medalists, Commonwealth medalists, world medalists. So yeah, it's been so far, it's so good, basically. So that's a little bit about myself. So first up, I'll tell you a little bit about our programs and the coaching that I'm doing at the moment. So at our academy, I guess it's pretty simple. We're trying to develop riders who we think can perform at the highest level, and we want that to be sustainable for the future. So that leads on to like our key goals, which is moving athletes onto the British cycling programs. Ultimately, that leads to international representation and gives riders the opportunity to deliver world-class performances. So that's whether that's representing GB, Worlds, Olympics, Europeans, or winning Commonwealth medals for Wales. A big part of the program is focusing on youth and junior athletes. By doing that, I think we're kind of investing for the long term. We do have a senior program, but it's much, much smaller these days. Although the door is never closed to like talented riders. Reality is starting younger, it gives riders more time to develop the skills, physical qualities needed to become professional bike riders. And also it's a little less difficult for them to break into the BC ranks and at youth and junior level than it is at senior level. Although, like that said, we've seen some riders really step up in the last few years, senior riders like Lowry Thomas and Steph Lloyd, who also started quite late and have moved on and had massive success as sprint cyclists, being late starters. And then finally, a lot of our programs are built around team sprint being the key event. Generally, that's just due to that being the BC strategy and us aligning with them. We really, really want to develop well-rounded bike riders on our program, but overall, like the most important performance metric is actually the standing lap, as that's essentially the key thing they look at for selections onto the British cycling programs. And then just kind of my coaching philosophy with working in the academy. I think this is particularly applicable for me because it's working with young riders, which is like the biggest part of my job. And it's about trying to take like a long-term approach to the coaching. So we're not really just about chasing like short-term results or quick wins. It's kind of more on focus on developing like the physical, the technical, the mental foundations that are going to help riders develop through their whole sporting careers. So yeah, not necessarily about chasing medals, although kind of I do hope that is a byproduct of what we are doing. It is performance sport after all. But we're trying to produce like lifelong cyclists, confident young people who understand the sport and actually enjoy the process. Training for elite sport is really, really tough. It's pretty brutal environment. So it really, really does help if they love what they do. And kind of part of that is about building like confidence and independence. We want young athletes that are going to think for themselves, make good decisions, and kind of like an emphasis on personal development as well for these athletes. So things like communication, teamwork, discipline, like those are the qualities that are going to help them become athletes, like just like really excel as athletes. But also I think that will help them like in their life outside cycling as well, because we know like unfortunately not every rider that we coach is going to go on to like elite success, but kind of hope that everyone who comes through the program is actually going to gain something from being part of it as well. So modern sprint landscape. For those of you that have kind of followed cycling for a while and have been fans of sprinting for a long time, I think you can probably say that sprint cycling does look pretty different today to what it looked like maybe 10 or 15 years ago. The event demands have changed, and so has the type of athlete you need to be competitive. So I think one of the biggest shifts is around like bigger gears. Riders are now racing on much bigger gears, and that kind of means there's a greater need for like the absolute strength they need to be able to get those gears moving. So because of that, we do end up spending a lot of time in the gym to help develop that. Longer races, both in terms of like the events have changed in women's from 500 to a kilo, but I guess really I'm talking about the difference between like in sprints and keirin's now. The races kind of tend to start a little bit earlier in the races. So yeah, it might kind of kicks off a little bit earlier. And also those races do require like sprinters to be able to do repeated efforts and recover quickly between rounds. So it's not just about like one explosive effort. It's about being like strong, fast, and it needs to be repeatable. So that's why I say as well, like aerobic fitness is actually really important as a sprinter, because it helps them deal with the challenging demands of like training and racing. And I think everyone in cycling knows, of course, aerodynamics and more advanced equipment are definitely playing a part these days as well. So bikes, helmets, positions, aero testing. They all play a really big role in sprinting now, and also a part of the reason the speed of the races has increased. So I guess in summary, like training kind of has evolved with the demands of sprinting, and we need to prepare riders for what the events look like today. So there's a big focus on strength, fitness, and aerodynamics really in sprinting. So so I was going to talk a little bit about like how I actually go about coaching riders and like kind of planning training and what that kind of looks like for a sprinter. I think some of it's relevant whether you're, fairly new to sprinting. You can kind of scale this back a little bit as well. But yeah, I'll go into a little bit of detail on like how I actually coach the riders and plan their training. So for me, when we talk about like building a training program, and I think like this is for sprint and endurance, one of the most important principles is working backwards from that key event. So whichever competition it is that you're targeting, everything in your training plan is like building towards that specific event. And then the way we kind of structure that is dividing it into phases. So that means splitting the year into different blocks. Each of them has got their own specific focus and purpose. And that ensures that riders are developing like the right qualities at the right time. It's not about trying to do everything at once. Typically, for me anyway, I split that into 3 main phases. I guess different coaches may call these by slightly different names, but this is kind of what makes the most sense to me. So number 1, general preparation, furthest thing out of the event. It's kind of about building strength, fitness, robust athletes, both like on and off the bike. And then we'd move into number 2, specific prep. So that's like basically as it sounds, the training becomes a bit more event specific. And the goal block is to transfer strength into power. More track sessions, more event specific effort. And then the final bit is around like the speed and the taper. And that's about like kind of the fine tuning part. So fine tuning their performances. So volume reduces, we look to maintain intensity, and the aim is to try and like hit peak form at that target event. Yeah, like I said, I don't think this is just for elite riders. It kind of a structure that we do scale down for like the juniors, the youth, and club level athletes as well. Like the time spent in each phase is going to vary depending on what your goals are, what athlete you have, like the time you have available, but principles like kind of stay the same. So I'll go into a little bit more detail over the next few slides on that. Okay, so general preparation. This is the one that's like the furthest away from your key event. So as I said, kind of like general phase of this training. So in this phase, we're not about chasing like peak performance. We're instead like focusing on building like the physical qualities needed for sprint. So strength and like aerobic fitness, kind of everything we need for like the rider to perform that more intense training later on. So that means for us, like gym strength is actually like a really big focus. So they spend quite a lot of time in the gym. Most of my riders will be doing like 3 sessions a week during this block. So getting them stronger. And then like on the bike, we're looking to develop on-bike strength as well. So that will mean like low cadence, high torque efforts, which is going to help develop that on-bike strength. And we touch on both like seated and out the saddle efforts because they are 2 different strengths on the bike. And then also look to try and build like the aerobic base in this too. So like that's really important for sprinters. It just means it'll help them handle like the training load and also help them recover from efforts. And like I said in that earlier slide, also about the repeatability, it's going to help them with that as well. And then when I say about lifting the ceiling in this block, I'm kind of talking about building the athletes like maximum strength and like just generally their physical capacity in this block. So in sprinting terms, that means like we're looking to increase the rider's potential to produce force. So in the specific prep phase, we'll focus on transferring that strength into power. But if the athlete doesn't first like raise their overall strength ceiling, there's going to be a limit to how much power they can then produce later. And then finally, we do just generally spend like a lot of time like working on skills. So like things like utilizing our track warm-ups, you know, we'll throw in like observation drills, like mirroring drills, just anything that they can, it's hard to work on when you're like in the later block. So it's a real good time for us to like really develop the skills, revisit things like looking, can we tweak positions, start technique? And again, especially with the younger riders here, this is really, really important. Like they've got like a huge amount of room to improve. So we try and like maximize all the track time we've got to like work on those skills. So after that general prep phase, we move into our specific prep phase, which is basically as it sounds, like about focusing on developing specific qualities for the event and position demands. So it's where we start to turn all the strength they've gained in that last phase into power. So yeah, everything we've built in the gym and on the bike, and we want to convert that to like usable race specific power. So generally riders spend more time on the track in this phase, normally 3 to 4 sessions per week, which is up from like 2 in the general prep block. Sessions become more specific. So like for individual riders, event demands. So training is going to look a little bit different to say starter in a team sprint compared to the last rider in a team sprint, because they are 2 different demands in the racing. And then training kind of gets a little bit closer towards what competition intensity is as well. So things like the gears start to come down. So we move away from those big like strength building gears, more towards race gears, and there's a bigger focus on like acceleration and speed. Kind of looking to maintain fitness through this block, so we don't want to lose what we've built. And then I think like one of the key challenges in this block is around kind of managing fatigue and the timing of sessions, because we're kind of looking for more quality on the track. You want to be able to push really hard still in this block, but really, really important is to protect like the key sessions, because we want riders to be able to get out the required effort and intensity to kind of make those power adaptations. So that's one of the challenges in that block. And then the final phase is the speed and taper phase. And this is focusing on speed and freshening up. So aim is to kind of peak for those key competitions. So sessions are going to replicate race conditions more closely. They'll be at like full intensity, high speed efforts. We often use the motorbike for chases or for lead outs to allow riders to hit like maximum speed and train at race cadences. Also, they'll be on race kit to allow them to do this as well. The volume, the overall training volume comes down quite a bit in this block, but the key is that intensity stays high. So you're trying to maintain like the riders' like sharpness, I guess, while you're allowing them to recover between sessions. And then mentally, it's also about confidence here. So like you want your athlete to feel fast and fresh and ready to perform, so not tired or overtrained. And then the last bit of it is like the taper period. It's pretty short. It'll vary between riders. So usually say between 1 to 3 weeks. They'll come out of the gym at some point during that as well. And I guess the final bit on this phase, it's kind of like about trusting the process, both as an athlete and a coach. You're not trying to chuck in more at the last minute. That's one of the things that sometimes goes wrong in this phase. You've got to kind of believe in it, coming out with that bit more volume, that things are going to kind of come together at that last little point. I might pause here and just see if there's like any burning questions or anyone wants me to go over, because I'm conscious I've just chucked like a ton of information at people on this bit before I move on to the next bit.
How much more have you got to go after this,
Not
Rachel?
that much more.
Yeah, I think finish the presentation, and then
Yeah, okay.
then we can open it up then for any questions. We can go back to maybe some slides if people wanted
Yeah,
to
no worries.
ask
Yeah,
about that.
there's a little bit of a change after this, but anyway, so I thought maybe
Right,
it's
okay.
a break.
Yeah,
But,
let's finish it, and then we can always go back to the slide people are speaking about. Okay,
cool, no worries.
over to you again.
Cool. So coaching youth and junior riders, I guess, how does that transfer then to working with youth and juniors? So I think like working with youth riders, I think the key thing is we're not treating them as mini professionals. So training is going to look a little bit different, especially when they're starting out in the sport. Like youth riders are juggling a lot of demands with school, friends, other sports. So part of the trick is just trying to find a balance for them. And like, kind of the key focus in that block is developing skills, confidence, educating them, and enjoyment, essentially. So it's about introducing like sprint in a fun and engaging way. At this stage, there's a big part of just wanting them to fall in love with the sport, and it's not just about getting results. So yeah, it's about learning to train and understanding the demands of the sprint events and like some of the basic sports science principles, like the why behind we're setting the training. And yeah, key time for developing bike handling skills. So things like balance, control, using the track. And in that, essentially, I try and like build a technical focus into every session. So it's not just about effort. And then we do encourage our youth riders to play multiple sports. And like the variety is going to help them long term, help build their athleticism and make them more robust. And I think it's kind of about developing like athletes first and cyclists second. It's kind of one of the foundations of the program, and essentially is going to help them longer term in the sport. And then with junior, things do start to become a bit more specific. We find that riders naturally kind of choose to specialize at this point, and the focus shifts more and more towards performance and understanding. So we kind of want riders to take ownership of their own training, and we want to help encourage that process. We also want to expose them to higher levels of competition in this phase, so national and international events, and help them adapt to those new environments. And then I think one of the most important outcomes in this phase is around self-sufficiency. So we want juniors that understand why they're doing what they're doing, and they can interpret their own data, warm up independently, reflect on their sessions. The ultimate goal isn't about medals. It's about riders want to finish the academy, ready to move away and become professional athletes. So whether that's, from the endurance point of view, moving on to road teams, but from my point of view with the sprint, potentially moving up to Manchester, they're going to be on their own in a really competitive environment, and we want to give them the skills they need to thrive in that environment. So yeah, youth and juniors, I think about coaching for long-term results, and we want to see them winning at senior level rather than just about chasing short-term success. And then bringing that down like another level again, like how can you bring that down to the club level? For most youth, like youth clubs, like sprint training doesn't need to mean full track sessions or gym programs. It's more about like adding sprint focus elements into what you're already doing. So integrating short efforts or sprints into like your endurance or bunch sessions. For example, doing some bunch efforts with 10 to 15 second sprints is going to go like a long way in terms of teaching them how to sprint and apply power and be able to do that under fatigue. Standing starts is a great thing for clubs to bring in as well. Like they're not just for track cycling, obviously. The standing starts for the cyclocross, the mountain biking, for BMX. And they're great for developing like their confidence, their explosiveness, their power. But obviously from a track cycling point of view, they're really, really essential as well. Even just running mini races, like so the team sprints, match sprints, short TTs, or using like games and challenges. So like relays, kind of replicating team sprint, drag races, timed efforts, games like sumo, track standing challenges, anything that's like really engaging for the kids. And I think the golden rule is about keeping it fun, like fun and short, essentially. It should feel like the most exciting part of the session for most riders. And of course, like you could do things like group roller or turbo sessions with a sprint focus as well. How about coaching riders with no velodrome? So I coach quite a few riders remotely. It's obviously ideal if you do have access to the track, but there's plenty of people that have made it without being living right by a velodrome. And obviously through COVID, most of our riders didn't get a chance to get on the track at all. But yeah, we still managed to make some really good progress. So yeah, not having a velodrome definitely doesn't mean sprint training has to stop. You just need to be a little bit smart about it. So yeah, a lot of the riders I coach, I program at home is standing starts. People think you can only really do those on a track, but you can do them on any safe stretch of road or just in the car park, like 30 to 60 meter efforts, ideally on their track bikes. We use a lot of video for feedback with these, and you can change it up in terms of gears depending on what you want to work on. So like, they're great to be developing torque on the bike if you do overgeared starts. You can do them seated, standing. So yeah, I use them a lot for the riders that don't come to the track very often. Rollers and turbo sessions, obviously another huge part of training, especially with the youth riders. I use rollers a huge amount to work on their high cadence efforts because it's, again, a massive part of youth sprinting, being limited on gears. They need to be able to pedal really fast, and that also helps set them up for the future in sprints as well. Positional work, I mentioned like aerodynamics are like really important in cycling these days. I tend to do those on the rollers with the riders too, because they can do them on their track bike, because essentially you really need to be practicing on the bike that you're riding on for that. And again, using
Right. Is Rachel stopped, or is it me?
mirrors or videos to refine that.
Oh, there she is. Sorry, you did cut out then, Rachel,
Oh,
briefly.
sorry, did it cut
think.
out, did it?
Yeah, you're definitely back.
Oh,
I didn't know it was my connection, but you're back normal now. So if you want to
oh,
carry
okay,
on,
cool.
yeah,
No
you're
worries.
only have like 10
What did I last
seconds.
say, Mark?
Um, you testing me now. I heard,
I
yeah,
was in
but
the
you got to the bottom of the slide essentially talking about
Okay, so yeah,
coaching
doing
them
some
from home.
positional work, yeah, turbo sessions. I think the key message is, if you don't have a velodrome, is like all those tools and sessions, they don't replace the track, but they prepare riders to get the most out of every track session when they do get the chance. And it's about staying consistent and then making every opportunity they have to go to the track count. And I think that, oh, one more slide. Sorry. So yeah, just a few tips for coaching sprinters. So especially with youths and juniors, I think the key thing is around keeping sessions like engaging and enjoyable. So rather than like planning a session that's just about physical development or physically focused, like adding in technical or race elements to make it more interesting. So things like, rolling 500s on the velodrome, say like a 30-second max effort. It's like there's definitely a benefit to doing those efforts, but sometimes they can get, like, if that's all you're programming, can get really boring and really hard for the riders. So swapping those up for something like more like race efforts, mini Kierans, you're going to get like a similar kind of effort out of it, doing those as handicap 500s and adding in some gap rushing challenges. Just thinking of ways that you can make like those efforts more enjoyable and have like a technical focus. It's like I said before, they're not mini professional riders. There's a time and a place for that, but trying to make sure there's a technical focus that each session makes it way, way more enjoyable for those guys. Yeah, and then around balance, so like prioritizing recovery, nutrition, and sleep. So I think when you're writing a training program, it's not to forget about like the overall load, like kids, especially when they're in school, they're playing sports, doing homework, adults, working, life, just general stuff. All of that is going to take away from recovery time and add more stress and load. And quality recovery, prioritizing nutrition, sleep will help maximize like adaptation from training. And it's also going to hopefully reduce the risk of illness and injury. Consistency is like such a key part of training. If you've got riders that just get in a cycle of like training, getting ill, probably reviewing the load is the first thing you want to do. It may just be that you're trying to squeeze in a little bit too much. And then finally, being adaptable, because no two riders are the same. So something you've done with someone may not be suitable for someone else. So yeah, just remembering each rider is an individual. So yeah, they're my last few tips. And that is it from me. I'm very conscious that I covered a lot there in quite a short space of time. So yeah, feel free to fire away if you want me to go back over anything or want any more information on any of the slides.
25 minutes you had. That's about right. You predicted the right amount of time.
Oh, I think I said like 15 to 20, didn't I?
Did you? Okay.
And I do talk quite fast as well. So
we'll give you 5 minutes. Okay. So what we'll do now, guys, there should be a feature to put your hand up if you can find it. So obviously there's a few of you in the room and you might just be happy to listen in. At the same time, you might have a specific question. This isn't just about the youth program and things. This could be you could be a senior athlete yourself and you'd want some advice from Rachel, or you're a coach at a junior club and want some extra advice around that, or it could be anything really. But let's try and keep it on topic. But somebody who wants to go first, really? Is there a feature to put your hand up? I don't know what it is, but or just unmute and someone starts saying something. Do you want to stop sharing your screen as well, Rich? I might sometimes.
Yeah, no worries. Hold on a second and stop share.
Don't leave the meeting. Oh, that could be a disaster. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, I go on, Richie.
Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself, Richie?
I used to race the track many moons ago, about 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm doing a level 3 now, personal training. I'm doing a topic on track cycling.
Oh, awesome.
So it's one of my things, obviously, that I've got to do an assessment on and stuff like that. So I was just asking, like, the difference between youth and juniors, about, like, supplement sides of it.
Yeah.
Would you like what kind of supplements would be different from youth to juniors, as in creatine and protein and that?
Yeah, so with like all our youth and junior programs, we do kind of go down a food first approach. So at youth level, we don't actually do any, don't encourage them to take any supplements essentially.
Right.
So we look to try and get them focusing more on fueling correctly for sessions, having the right foods to recover. So yeah, we don't do that at all. And it's kind of the same at junior, but like the reality is that they are starting to become more professional athletes and things like that. And then they'll be doing their own research. So we do start to cover like supplements more because we'd rather make sure that they're doing it right rather than just going off and buying some rogue thing from the go-to on the corner.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing with the supplements we talk about with youth and juniors is around buying with Informed Sports. I don't know if you've seen like that. So making sure that they're buying things that are batch tested. They've got the Informed Sport logo on, so it kind of reduces the risk of any kind of contamination stuff. And I guess it's like a layering thing. So the first thing might be around having protein shakes for after training, using gels, things like that for energy. And then some of them start to look at creatine and potentially things like taking bicarb on like a race day, things like that. Yeah, that's kind of about as far as we go. They're mostly on like multivitamins, etc., that sort of thing. But I would say like protein would be the first thing, making sure they're getting like the protein amounts right and making sure they're spreading them evenly through the day. And then things like taking creatine might come in then probably as like a second year junior for them. We'll start to look at that. And then for things like event specific demands, like something maybe doing like a kilo, might look at taking bicarb for the kilo maybe towards the end of junior. I know, right? Horrendous. Don't recommend, but
I've been down that road a few times.
Oh yeah. Great. Thanks, Richie, for the question there. Yeah, nice one. On to the anybody next person. Or it'll be a very short call. Jonathan Booth, you've got your hand up. So just do a bit of an introduction. I don't know if Rachel knows everyone, but it might be just worth you just giving a bit of an intro who you are and like then your question. Jonathan?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah, I'm Jonathan Booth. I'm a track coach at between Towie Riders and Velomurning Club out in Carmarthen on the velodrome there. I also have a daughter who races track as well. So she's wants to get into the sprint side. It's probably more a question around, we used to have the Wednesday sort of sprint sessions that used to sort of fit in and around what Owen was doing with the endurance stuff. Are they coming back for the younger riders to have a go at?
I hope so, because I do think they're really needed, basically. Though we've definitely got like a little bit of a gap at the moment in terms of like the pathway for sprint development. It is something I'm discussing with Steve at the moment. It's just trying to find where we're going to fit it. I think the problem we've got with the Wednesdays is that Owen's session got so busy that it became like the times we were having was shorter and shorter to be able to do it. So Wednesday night.
So just to add a bit of context for people maybe who don't know Steve or Owen is. So Owen is a coach at the Velodrome in Newport, and Steve is the manager of the Velodrome. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so I'm chatting with the guys from Newport Live to see if we can find like another time to put on like a youth and junior sprint session, like a development kind of sprint session, because yeah, I've had a few people asking about what sessions kids can go to get started in sprinting. It is really, really limited at the moment. So yeah, there's no like specific one right now that we're running or that Newport Live are running, but it's on the cards to come back.
Great. That's great. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, we've got a question in the chat from Jason. Again, feel free to ask the question. I can ask it for you. So warm up for sprinters. What's your go-to, Rachel?
I guess it will depend on which event they're doing, but yeah, and also, gosh, this is quite a big question because it will depend on whether you have access to track time as well. So I would say for like a race day warm up, we'd normally start, depending on the event, hour 15 before the event for their warm-up. So initial part will be on their turbos. They'll do a little bit of easy, followed by a progressive effort to kind of get their body temperature up, and then a couple of sprints on the turbo. And then after that, it will change depending on what their event is. So for example, for like a team sprint or a kilo, for the riders who are like the longer ones, like P3s or like kilo riders, we'd look to get like a really hard effort in there to get the lactate up in their muscles. So probably like 45 minutes before, maybe something like a 30-second effort on the turbo, like something that's actually really hard. And then followed by some standing starts, maybe like 20 minutes before. So that would be for like a timed event. For like a sprint day, so like a flying 200. Things like if you're at a new velodrome, like we try and get them to get on the track to do a warm-up jump. So the first bit will kind of always stay the same around like the initial turbo with like a progressive effort in it. But then the parts afterwards will change. So the sprinters will get on, they'll try and do something like a flying 100 before getting up for their flying 200 then on the velodrome. Essentially something that's going to prepare them for whatever the demand of the event is. That's the bit that changes. So first bit kind of stays the same. And then the second part of the warm-up will vary depending on what event, how long the event is. The longer the event, the kind of the bigger the effort is that you do beforehand, essentially. I don't know if that helped enough, but yeah.
Yeah, he's nodding, so that it must have helped. Yeah, great. So we do have another question to chat. But is there we'll go to the room again for like an in-person question, and then I'll go to the question in the chat. Does anyone want to ask a question?
I'll ask another one.
Go on, Richie, you go for it.
No, as a youth, right? You know, I'm only asking this because this is what I'm covering as well. It's like,
yeah,
as a Monday to Sunday week, as a weight training session and a bike session. So how would you split that through the week from Monday to Sunday? So time on the bike, time on the weights, sessions on the bike, sessions on weights.
Cool. Did you say that for youth riders to start with? Or
The older riders.
The older riders. Gym's sessions split evenly through the week, so like kind of spread out. So never really do gym back to back, essentially. So if it's in the general prep phase and they're 3 gym, it might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday for gym, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And the bike sessions, again, it will depend on what the focus is. So one of the key things we follow is like training same qualities on the same day. So it doesn't hurt to do, say, like a gym session followed by like overgeared start session, for example, because you're both training strength in the same day, rather than you wouldn't want to put like an interval turbo session after the gym, because it would reduce the adaptations you get from that strength training.
Yeah.
So it's kind of about like protecting where the key sessions are. So gym is probably the focus in that point in, say, a general prep block. So I'll try and go like spread those evenly, and then I'll fit the bike sessions around it. And like I said, training same physical qualities on the same day. If I'm doing like a hard endurance thing, something that's going to affect training for the rest of the week, I'd put that on their last day with the rest day following it, so it doesn't like impact the rest of their key training. And then the closer we get to competition, then the track stuff becomes more and more priority. So then I start to think like, okay, we're coming into specific prep, we're getting closer to competition. Here's the key track sessions. I'll plan those in first, and then I'll start to fit the other bits around it with trying to protect, like, if I've got a track session I know is really important for that rider, it might be I'll try and plan them and they got a rest day the day before. So I guess it's about thinking like, what's the like most important sessions of the week? How do I protect those? And then spreading your gym stuff out like evenly.
So you wouldn't really double up then. So like, you wouldn't do a weights in the morning and a bike session at night.
Yeah, definitely. So actually with the senior riders, we tend to go on like a day on, day off thing. So it will depend on like time and availability, right? So for the guys who are seniors who we don't have working or, got a bit more time on
time,
a bit more time on their hands, I actually tend to do like a lot of double days. So for them, it looks a little bit like track and gym on a Tuesday. They'll do some aerobic stuff on a Wednesday, but low intensity that's not going to impact their next day. They'll do double day on a Thursday, bit of aerobic on a Friday, double day on a Saturday. So that would be kind of how the sprinters in this general prep phase are working.
Okay.
So yeah, we do quite a lot of double days. When you then add in work, school, etc., we can't always get it to look like that, right?
Yeah, I understand that.
But so you then have to
the senior riders, you look at that as obviously double days, and you would put them in as double days then.
Yeah, we do. It feels like it kind of works quite well for the guys. Like I said, closer to competition, we wouldn't do it. The gym kind of reduces, so that looks different. But at this stage, when they're a long way out of competition, we're doing a lot of that at the moment with double days.
Great.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Richie. So yeah, we got a few more questions in the chat. So we go on to Becky's asked the question here, Rachel. Mm-hmm. How does weight training differ from sprint versus endurance riders? So obviously there's benefits to both kinds doing it. So what's the difference though? How would it look?
Yeah, no, really good question. I guess a few things. So I think because for the sprinters, like the strength is such a big part, like I talked about, they need to be able to produce a huge amount of force on the track to get these big gears moving. There's a much bigger emphasis on developing that maximum strength. So I think it's quite rare you'd see like an endurance rider doing like 3 big gym sessions a week, because it would just take away so much from their most important part of it, which is going to be around building their aerobic engines. So there's going to be both like in terms of the volume that they do in the gym, and I think also the kind of focus, really, like as an endurance rider, like you don't need to be as strong as a sprinter essentially. So they don't need to spend as much time in the gym. They're not going to be chasing like the big weights that the sprinters are, but obviously still on the velodrome, especially for endurance, they're like a team pursuit, for example, has still got to get a really big gear off the line. So they still need to be able to do some training and make sure that their body can kind of cope with that level of effort. But the reality is they don't need to produce as much force as a sprinter. So yeah, they're not going to be chasing quite the same numbers that and like a sprinter is going to be doing as an endurance rider.
Thanks, Rachel. But yeah, again, we'll flip between. Any questions in the room? Somebody want to ask a question out loud? Otherwise, I'll just go to the questions in the chat. I'll just go to the chat then, Rachel. Okay, so we've got 2 more. So Jonathan's asked a question. Multi-event days. How should a rider fuel throughout the day?
Okay. So for sprint, like carbs is going to be the main source of fuel. So making sure they're having enough carbs essentially through the day. Decent breakfast, regular things. The challenge is on race day, obviously riders struggle to eat enough. So it's like, you've got nerves, you feel a bit sick, you're getting up and down off the velodrome. It's really, really challenging to actually get enough food in. So kind of just, sometimes it's just about finding foods that you can eat on race day. So yeah, focusing on carbs throughout the day to make sure you've got enough energy to actually do those repeated efforts. I think generally from what I'm seeing, that riders don't fuel enough. You've got to eat more than you think you've got to be fueling well. And then for a multi-day event, then obviously recovery is going to be important. So both carbs and protein for after the racing as well. So once you finish, focusing in the hour, ideally the hour after racing, is getting like a really good source of protein and the carbs. So like for young riders, that might just be like yogurt, a banana. That's great. Like that's really, really good. That covers most of the grounds. Or for like the older riders, a protein shake straight after racing, and then depending on what time that racing's finished, might be an evening, like a really good evening meal after that as well. But yeah, big focus on getting enough carbs in through the day.
Great.
Yeah, just
Go on,
on
Jonathan.
that, sorry.
On.
Yeah, I think when we were doing some of the endurance racing last year, because we sort of got Mabley to do a bit of that just to build her engine last year. But when we were doing omniums, we would frequently run out of gas, even though we were sort of drinking energy drinks and flapjacks and having bananas. By the time the points race came around in the late afternoon, we're flat. Energy was really flat, and so we were wondering whether actually you need something substantial in the middle of the day just to fuel you through the afternoon, because we were running out of gas by the time it came around.
If you can stomach it, then yeah, definitely. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It's hard. It's sometimes hard, like, especially on like an omnium day, isn't it? When they're like up and down and there's a lot of racing going on. But if you do get a gap in the racing and there's time to eat a proper meal, 100% go for it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so yeah, we do have another. So any questions in the room? Anyone want to unmute and ask a question? There's definitely people who like talking in the room who I know. So I don't know why they haven't unmuted themselves, if I'm going to be completely honest. But anyway, okay, right. I'll go to the. So Jamie can't unmute. So I've got your question, Jamie. We'll ask that now, okay? So Jamie's asked the question in the chat. How long is the entire sprint program and each phase typically? So I guess you spoke earlier in the presentation, Rachel, didn't you, about working back from an event?
Yeah.
So
sure.
I guess what's the time frame, I guess, if you're targeting a particular race?
Yeah. So I find the easiest way to work is in years, but that's just really because of the group that we have and like the way our selections work, because we do like selections around like October and then do selections again the same time the year after. So I tend to plan over the course of the year for riders. And each phase is going to really depend on what the event is and what rider it is. So for example, like for some of my like second year juniors and senior riders now who are aiming towards Commonwealth Games, their general prep phase at the moment is kind of 16 weeks long at the moment. So it'll be 4 months in that general prep phase. And then they're going to they'll have a shorter than specific prep phase the other side of Christmas. But then the closer we get to Commonwealth Games, it's basically what we can fit in at the time, because we're essentially building up to first up senior nationals. Is kind of like our midpoint through the year. So we'll do like one kind of cycle up to that point then the first half of the year. So it'd be like general prep, followed by specific prep, followed by speed and senior nationals. And then we've got like a kind of shorter run into the Commonwealth Games. So we'll kind of repeat the same process afterwards, but then that side of the Commonwealth Games, because we've got so short time, that general prep phase is probably going to be like 6 weeks. So we're kind of getting all the work in early. So it's a bit of it could be anything, essentially, the answer to that question in terms of the phase. But yeah, it just depends on which event you're working to, in how much time that you've got allowed, basically. I think ideally for something like a general prep phase, you'd want to have like 8 weeks or so to make a difference, and probably like similar for specific prep. Speed can be a little bit shorter. You find that when riders come out of when you kind of drop that volume, the speed comes fairly quickly towards the end. And you also don't want to make that speed phase too long, because you're not training as much and you don't want to like dip and kind of actually lose fitness and lose strength in that phase as well. So yeah, it will basically depend on how much time you've got available and the needs of the individual rider. Like if I've got a really, really strong rider who's already really strong, who's not so good on the bike, might shorten the general prep phase, make the specific prep phase a little bit longer. or vice versa. If I've got a rider whose like weakness on the track is that they're just not strong enough to get the gear going, might extend that general prep phase and shorten the specific prep phase for them. So yeah, it really, really does vary, but I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So we did have a question on the community post on Facebook. It was from a coach at the BMX club.
Yeah.
So I think it was quite a broad question. Any tips with regards to like sprinting in BMX? So obviously the most famous like sprinter, I would say, in the world, Chris Hoy. That's fair to say. I think he's pretty much the most famous sportsman in track sprinting that's ever lived. He used to be a BMX rider, I know, and that's where he started out. So obviously, at some point in his early youth career as a BMX rider, doing gate starts and things, his skill set is quite similar. So have you got any advice around? I know we've got some good BMX clubs here in Wales now, and it's an up-and-coming discipline. Any tips with regards to the sprint element of that discipline?
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. There's a few other examples of BMXers that have come to sprint as well. People like Harry Racing was a BMXer who's multiple world champion. Sinead Reed obviously came across as well. I think Jeffrey Hoogland also did BMX as well. So another one of the Dutch sprinters. Yeah, Jason Slaughter. I mean, just checking my facts now. I'm doubting myself. Yeah, so there's quite a few examples of BMXers coming over to sprint. I'm not sure I know any of that going the other way round, but that probably comes down to how skillful they are. But essentially, like a lot of the qualities you want as a BMXer are actually really similar for a sprinter as well. When I was living in Manchester, we used to do pretty much all our gym sessions with the BMXers. So yeah, and it was very, very similar training in the gym. They were really working on strength and explosiveness, essentially. So in terms of sprint training for BMX, like I'm definitely no expert on BMX, but I imagine the way that you're going to kind of structure and phase a program is going to be fairly similar as well. And in terms of like focusing on the gym, that's going to be a really important part as BMXers. So if they're not already doing that, getting in the gym, building some strength is definitely going to help their training. And then again, things that I've seen from like training with the BMXers in the past, similarities to what we do in the sprint program. They do a lot of work on standing starts as well, training that because essentially getting out the gate fast is really important for that too. So I think there is a lot of crossovers and essentially a lot of the physical qualities are the same. So from like, I'm definitely no expert on BMX at all, but I think some of the things that benefit the sprinters in training. So the gyms there, being pretty fit so they can repeat the efforts because you've got multiple rounds of the day. So some making sure they add in some kind of aerobics there is going to probably still really benefit them as BMXers as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're a BMXer that wants to come and have a go on the velodrome, feel free to get in touch and get down to the track.
Okay, right. We'll put the message out to our BMX clubs. There we go. There we go. I'll let them know. So again, I've got no more questions left in the chat. I do have some other questions potentially that I would like to get covered off as well. But let's go back to the room. It's definitely not covered anything for like maybe new riders. I know there's some people in the chat who work with like people who are just getting into cycling, and maybe I'm looking at Simon and Gareth from Towie Riders. You're going to unmute and ask a question about the young riders in your club. Oh, there we go. So we do have one. No, that maybe they're just pretending they're listening in, Rachel, and then they're actually asking any questions. Okay. I seen Gareth yesterday at the Brummie cyclocross race. You'd think he'd ask a question, wouldn't he? Oh, Simon, there we go. I bullied Simon into asking a question.
Go on then. So, in terms of young riders, maybe new riders to cycling, what's your best tips for identifying a potential sprinter, and what's the best way to develop them to promote those skills?
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm so keen for clubs to like kind of be able to recognize this because it's such a big part of it. We obviously do our talent ID program, but it's obviously hugely time consuming. So I'd love to see like more kids coming from the clubs into our programs for certain. That said, it can be quite challenging with young riders to identify them as sprinters. We found like when we did the talent ID program, especially for the younger riders, we wanted to leave it quite broad. because you couldn't really tell until they got a little bit older. Some people you could, but you didn't always tell until they got a little bit older if they really had sprint potential or not. So I think things like there's always a thing that people say is like, oh, if they're getting dropped on the hills on the road ride, but they're pretty quick, go and try sprint. But I kind of always hated that, because it'd always be like, oh, if you don't make it as an endurance rider, sprint's your second option. Whereas I'd really love to see kids like who really love sprinting choose it as their first choice. So I think things we see with the kids is that like they've got like a decent cadence as a youth rider, so they can kind of spin pretty well. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go down a sprint route, because there's plenty of endurance riders that can sprint fast at the end of the race. But I guess that's one of the key things around that, is that they've kind of got that power and explosiveness and that kind of that speed, that cadence. Ability to push themselves in a short space of time as well. I think that's one of the other things, and probably something that splits up the sprinters to the endurance riders, is that like everyone can kind of work hard, but as a sprinter, you need to be able to like access that in a really short space of time. So those kids that can kind of really empty themselves in those sprints, they're the ones I would say that like probably have got the sprint ability. So yeah, kids like that you're looking for, and anyone that just really enjoys it, to be perfectly honest with you, because I think what we've seen is that talented cyclists have probably got the choice to go either way with the cycling. So just trying to encourage kids that actually enjoy it to come and give it a bit of a go as well. Obviously, like with older kids, you can get them on a watt bike, things like that if you really want to. And kids that are putting out like a half decent power, obviously it will vary by age and gender and stuff, what those power numbers are, but I'm always happy to share any of the data that we have from our talent ID, stuff for anyone that wants to have a go, or think you've got a kid that's potential to do things. But peak power is essentially the biggest marker, as if whether the kids are going to be any good or not on the track, basically. So yeah, I hope that helps a little bit anyway.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Simon, for the question that I forced out of you. So we got Jude. So Jude, I guess maybe you could elaborate a bit if this is related to yourself or a junior athlete, because that's kind of what we're focusing on. Oh, you
Okay, I've unmuted.
Yeah, go on,
So
Jude.
yeah, I mean, I put the question into the chat there about basically any tips for kind of building the explosive speed out the gate, which is so absolutely critical, I guess, for sprints. Now, I'm going to say the old-fashioned 500, because yes, I'm being selfish here. I'm a masters athlete. Jason knows me from racing. So yes, I'm interested from the youth and junior point as well. But really, sort of any hints and tips around improving that sort of lap one time where it really counts.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think like I know we keep coming back to the youth and juniors and stuff, but I think everything, well, actually a lot of what I talked about is probably more relevant around the training side of it to the later stages of junior going into senior athletes anyway. Yeah, explosive power from the gate. I guess number one, the easiest thing is to get time to practice at the gate. Now, that's not always practical, I know, for people, which is always a challenge. The more time you can get out the gate, the more it's going to help, because essentially timing, and I would say confidence, is the big thing that people struggle with in terms of that. Like there's always like a thing about getting caught in the gate in the back of people's minds around that. If you can't get the gate, just practicing standing starts, having the beeps and stuff off your phone. There's a thing on YouTube to do it, can really help with that timing. And again, it's about like intent really on that start. So standing starts, like a big part of it is just the simplest way of thinking of a standing start is trying to get the most amount of force possible through that downward pedal stroke. Essentially, that's the biggest marker of like what a good start is going to be. So yeah, intent is a really, really big part in that. So when you're doing your training with those starts, it does really need to be a conscious effort to try and get as much as possible out in each of those first few pedal revs. Now, building that like explosive power will be like a longer term process. It will be kind of the same thing of starting like on those bigger gears. So you've got time to work on technique, build that torque on the bike. And then like as you come closer to racing, coming back down towards your race gears and then working on that speed, that explosiveness and things. So it will be like a bit of a process where you might need to take like a step back to kind of put things together. But I would say confidence and intent on any of your starts is going to be like a big thing just psychologically in terms of doing that. And then from a training point of view, work on developing torque, and then that will help you in terms of that actually what power you can put down and what force you've got available to get that gear moving as quick as possible.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the question, Jude. So yeah, we do it. I've been told. It seems like I'm being told off now from Gareth. So Gareth asked a question. So he is multitasking at the moment, Rachel. So that's why he couldn't unmute, which is absolutely understandable, as you will know with a young
I know the feeling.
child at home as well. So I have a 9-year-old that loves sprinting, which is a good start. Like we covered that earlier. I had a question around what should be prioritized over cadence and power as he gets older. We focus on cadence with him now, but he sees others
Yeah,
grinding a massive gear. Any advice for him and others like him? I know definitely like Towie riders have got that's where Gareth's boy is from. They certainly have got like a lot of young riders around that age and quite talented ones too. So you might cover off lots of things. So over to you, Rachel.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, great question. And I'm really excited that you have a 9-year-old that loves sprinting, and hopefully I'll see them on Newport or maybe on our program in a few years' time. You're 100% doing the right thing, focusing on cadence with them at the moment. Like at this age, yeah, they really don't need to be worrying about pushing big gears. I can absolutely understand why he would like want to go down that route, because probably watching any of the racing, and especially at senior level, you'll see guys like riding massive gears these days. But really at this stage and for many, many years for him yet, that isn't going to matter. Like we only really start to introduce the bigger gears like with the second year use, so coming up towards 16, and like the gym stuff around then. So before that, cadence stuff is probably most important, and essentially bike skills and just having fun with it. So like I said earlier, just any kind of mini races, any kind of sprint drills, anything that's going to kind of enjoy it and develop his like kind of technical abilities on the bike is going to be really important. But yeah, working on cadence is probably the key thing, so you're definitely doing the right thing with that.
Great.
Thank you, Annie. He was listening in there as well. So.
Oh, he was listening.
Good.
Hey,
well, Gareth, I hope you've got like a nice group of sprinters that are all going to come through in a few years' time. This group of 9-year-olds. I'd love to see like a group of Towie rider sprinters coming through to the program.
Yeah, I'll leave that to Jonathan and Simon to answer. They're better placed than me.
Great. He did well on the week. He did well yesterday. Third, wasn't he, Gareth, in the cyclocross race yesterday?
Yeah, he came third behind Harry and Alfie again.
Yeah, a mainly flyer and a Towie rider. There we go on the top three steps in that race. Yeah, I'd imagine that happens quite regular. I think across lots of the disciplines. Yeah. Okay. So, any other questions, guys? Oh, I've got another question from Simon. But any questions in the room? Nope. Okay, we'll go on to Simon's put a question in the chat. What are your thoughts on new youth gear restrictions? Okay, you be careful now answering this, Rachel. What do you say? Leaving the younger riders unrestricted sounds like a backward step if they are riding those big gears. I guess that's his opinion then. So.
Yeah. Well, I definitely do have an opinion on this. So I think obviously they've changed the youth A gear restrictions at the moment. They've gone up just 2 inches at the moment. I think the biggest issue at the moment is between the youth and juniors. It's just such a big jump. So the way that sprinting's gone, like I said, it's all about riding bigger gears and strength. And I think what we see is they go up to juniors and make this humongous jump from basically a 90, and then in that first year of juniors, then you'll have kids racing on 110, say in that first year of juniors. It's just a wild jump. And I think that's, if you can kind of, you've got some good coaching and a bit of understanding, you can kind of help prepare them at youth level to make that jump. But for most kids who are kind of new to the sport, like it's just kind of wild really it's just so far removed from what they're going to end up doing as juniors. So personally, I think like it's a little bit too small. The like jumps that they do, like it's not very progressive. And I think I would have liked to have seen the youth A gear restriction go up slightly bigger, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it's a difficult one because at the same time, I think like developing things like cadence and pedaling efficiency and stuff is important. So, and that can be developed by riding the smaller gears. But I think personally that the way it is at the moment isn't a great system where you've got use on tiny gears and then it suddenly goes from that to being unrestricted as a junior.
Great. So we're at the point where I have no questions in the chat. So unless anybody has got any other questions here, we were scheduled for until 8:30, so I'm happy to finish early. But please, now we've got the opportunity to ask Rachel. Ask away. Any other questions? Silent, dead silence. Okay, that's fine by me. Okay, so yeah, with that said, then, so yeah, thank you everyone for attending. So what we usually have after this call is a link to the next topic. However, we are going to take a break over December and January. It's kind of is a busy time for a lot of people, so we will reconvene these kind of monthly calls starting back in February. So if anyone in the room does have any like topics that they kind of want to cover off, I've covered lots over the last kind of 12 months. But if there's anything specifically you want to cover off that we haven't maybe covered before, or things you would like to go over again, please let us know. You should be able to have my email or kind of contact. Well, I'll put my personal email in, not personal email, but my direct work email in the chat now. So you could send things over, Rachel. Zwiftest kill in cycling.
I saw someone posting about this the other day, actually. I've got to say, it hasn't really had much of an effect on us from a sprint point of view. But I saw there was an argument to say that, we had a big loss in terms of like the skills and abilities needed to be able to ride in a bunch, and reduces the number of people going out on club rides, etc., etc. I think it's like a good training tool, but obviously for me, like my kind of passion is really the track cycling, and yeah, it doesn't really have too much of an effect on that. But I can see from an endurance point of view why it might be a bit of a problem with more and more people going in that direction. Just to add to what you were saying, Mark, as well, that yeah, if people do want me to follow up, if you haven't had a chance to ask a question or didn't want to, and there's something that comes to you afterwards in terms of the presentation and want to follow up on me to just explain something further or go into more detail, then Mark can share my email as well, and just drop me a message, and I'm happy to go over anything that I've covered anyway.
Okay, so Jonathan, you've raised your hand. Yeah, do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, just following up on that. Actually, there's a question. We've got rollers at home, but we've also got a smart trainer on Zwift. But what I've done is changed it to a fixed wheel.
Oh, cool.
So I can ride it as a track bike. So it's a proper fixed wheel. There's no free wheel in it, so you can drive it. I'm just thinking from the skills and techniques point of view, which is better for training at home, going on the rollers and feeling the movement of the rollers, or doing sessions where you're purely focused on driving the pedals and getting the power out, or is it both?
Well, they've both definitely got a place for certain, because for me, like with the youth, spending plenty of time on the rollers is really important, because I think that, like, one, it's great in terms of developing cadence. They have to learn to be smooth and pedal efficiently when they're using the rollers and stuff. Whereas like on a turbo, like you can kind of get away with like just focusing on like force and power, rather than there isn't much like skill involved. Like sometimes you can just like rag it really to get like really good effort. But in terms of like developing the physical side of it, then obviously the turbo is really important, because like I said, there's not much resistance on the rollers. So like they've both got a place, but both in different things. But plenty of time on the rollers as a youth rider will be beneficial.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so I did put the wrong email in the chat. I spelled Beicio Cymru wrong. I've now put the correct one in, if anyone did copy and paste that. So now copy the current one in there. Sorry. Yeah, so obviously we talked about young riders. I guess obviously we got Gareth's boy who's like really loves sprinting, but I guess the advice, Rachel, is like you don't need to specialize too young, too soon. So I know Gareth's boy is doing lots of different kinds of cycling. He even came to the BMX track the other day, Rachel, to get coached by the best BMX coach in Wales. Not me, but okay. But he definitely, he's definitely looking. I guess as a 9-year-old boy, he obviously loves riding his bike. He's doing a cyclocross. He's tried out some BMX. He really likes sprinting. Is that good advice?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think obviously they get older, it becomes more serious, and the training becomes like more difficult. I think when you're young, enjoy as much as you can in whichever disciplines you want to, and they're all going to kind of help each other. Yeah, obviously then when you kind of come into youth, going into juniors, like it kind of does kind of narrow and specialize a little bit more if you want to be competitive, because unfortunately even at youth level it is quite competitive these days, but that doesn't mean you can't ride your bike and do other stuff as well. But the younger ones especially, yeah, go for it, do whatever they enjoy basically.
Yeah, cool. And another question that I kind of wanted covering off is like I think we mentioned it before. Wales as a nation, I guess, has been really successful in track sprinting. Over the last number of years. Like, is that more luck than judgment? So even thinking about like I don't know, but maybe you can explain. Like, obviously the pathway's working. So we've got Becky James, world champion, Olympic medalist. We've got obviously Emma Finucane, who did fantastic in the Olympics, world champion, senior level. We've got junior athletes on the program winning, competing. Like, obviously, I'll try and name drop people I know because I bump into them down the velodrome. I feel like I'm bumping into superstars. So obviously we've got like Johan and Bronwyn competing on the world championship kind of juniors. We've got Steph Lloyd and James Ball winning rainbow jerseys again on the tandem sprint and other sprint events. What's the magic formula then in Wales? Why is as such a nation of like 3 million people, how are we producing all these rainbow jerseys?
Yeah.
All down to you, Rachel.
Well, I want to say it's more judgment than luck. I dig at my coaching mark. Yeah, it is a good question. I think we have become a little bit better at identifying talent. So using things like our talent ID programs, that's definitely been a big part of, I guess, increasing the numbers of people that are like a decent level in sprinting. Like few of our recent world and European and national champions have all come through that program. So that's definitely played a big part in bringing people into it as well. But like, of course, people like Laura Thomas and Steph and Emma and Rian have all come through on a different route to that talent ID system. I think I don't know really what's the big part of it really. I think we have a really good team in place at the moment. So I get a lot of support with Sport Wales, and we lean on the sports science with them. Like, we've got fantastic, the people that have been on this call, we've got fantastic nutritionists, we've got fantastic S&C, physiology. So we try and use them quite a lot and bring in that sports science stuff at the younger ages. So it's like really about like an all-round education. Try and have like a good competitive training group, which helps push each other on. I think part of it is like we like to aim big as well. Like part of the thing with the girls was kind of a project that I put in place from, what would that have been? It was 2 years at the Commonwealth Games, so 2020. We didn't have a women's team sprint team. It was about Emma basically on the program at that time. She obviously came through Towie Riders and was unbelievably talented. And my goal was to try and get a women's team sprint to that Common Games and win a medal, which basically 2 years out, you probably would have laughed because we didn't have anyone else essentially at that level. But we kind of went out, we looked at the sprinters, we kind of created a really good training group. And yeah, we aim big basically with that. So we had 6 girls 3 years out all competing for that spot. And yeah, it kind of paid off in the end, and we got the bronze medal at the Commonwealth Games. But yeah, there's a combination of aiming big, putting like a plan in place to do it, and then kind of creating the right environment for that to happen, I think. So yeah, it's good.
Okay, so I've unearthed some more questions here. So I think it's more of a compliment. I think so. Jason's put a compliment in there. Watching from the outside, the Welsh structure looks better. I guess better than before, or better than other people's. Jason, what do you mean? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Better than others. There we go. So we're doing.
I think we're fortunate that we've got we can run this program. I think obviously if you're English, it's just that little bit harder, to be honest. We're really fortunate we've got a world-class facility in Newport, and we can be based from there. That we've got really good support staff that you know, we're in place to like help the riders move in that right direction. And I think like being Welsh and kind of passionately Welsh as well, like we kind of, kind of dream big, just kind of go for it really, don't we? And put a lot into what we're doing. So I think there's a lot of things that kind of come together, to be honest with you, to kind of make it happen, and it's definitely a bit of a team effort. But now I think we've got the ball rolling. I'm hoping it'll kind of lead on to future success with things as well, because definitely the first bit was the hardest bit, and now we're starting to see the success. I think success breeds success essentially as well. So just keep trying to do it better each year, really.
Yeah. So again, another compliment from Dougie, his daughter. I think are you a coach, Rachel? I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So as a parent with a rider on the pathway, it's the availability of resources and the coaching team and the ethos of the program. So like you said,
that's
that's quite a nice thing. Okay. So how many medals are we going to win in the Commonwealth Games, Rachel, next year, Wales? Because we've got
Darren will probably kill me for putting a number on this. I really don't want to go big on this, and I think we have got the potential to win 10 medals, I want to say, which would be a massive jump up from what we've won in the past. But I think we've got like the most talented riders we've ever had going into the game. Do you know what? You can hold me for that. I'm going to back us as a team, and I'm going to say we're going for 10 medals at the next
And that's
game.
Not sprint medals. That's just
no, not just sprint, not just sprint. Although I'd like to think we'll make up a big part of it, obviously. We've got the most talented riders we've ever had going into the. So we'll have a smaller team than we've ever had going before, but I think we'll win. I think we'll have our most successful games ever.
There you go. You heard it first, everyone.
Kaz and Darren on the phone to me after this call now, telling me off for putting a number
you can't be promising Commonwealth Games medals on call. 10 guaranteed. Guaranteed 10. Excellent. Okay.
Believe in our riders.
Believe in our riders. I hope that hopefully they're listening now. They believe in them so much. Fantastic. Okay, right. I know we went on a bit from when it did go silent. We have a few more kind of comments, but any last questions from the crowd? No. So like the offers there, guys. My email is on there. So if you do have any like things you wanted to cover off, send them through to me, and I can kind of forward them on to Rachel. My email's in the chat there. Just reach out to anyone in Beicio Cymru, really. It doesn't have to be about sprinting. And that's what we always say. And a few of you do have my number. I know that, or can contact me in other ways. It could be about anything. It could be about your club development. It could be grants, and funding structures, or like some advice, Rachel, maybe on, structuring a coaching session. How would you integrate some sprint training in
No, I'm always happy if people want to get in touch with anything like that. Like at the end of the day, we want to, like, especially from my point of view, like higher standards of coaching, more knowledge that's shared out there. Like we're only going to kind of get better as a nation, and we'll see riders coming onto our programs at higher standards than before. So not protected at all about like what we kind of do on our programs or what knowledge that I've got. So I'm always happy to chat and share and discuss essentially. So feel free to get in touch.
Yeah, get in touch, guys. And again, that'll apply to, I imagine Rob and John, who also, do other disciplines. They're more happy.
If I'm slow at replying, though, I do apologise, because I say all of this and I get inundated with coaching requests now, and then I am fairly busy leading up to the Commonwealth Games next year. But I will do my best to get back to you guys. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, I know. I'm very, very busy with a young family there at home too.
Yeah.
So. Okay, do you have it? Oh, we're good. I thought this question was going to come up. Do you have any time to come and do a sprint session in Carmarthen for our younger riders?
So I would actually love to. And if I do have time, I would very happily come and do that. It may be challenging over the next year because of the Commonwealth Games, essentially, because I think I'm juggling Commonwealth Games athletes, juniors, youths program at the moment. So I've got a very busy year. If I can't do it, though, one of the other coaches that's working with our youth program, Amy, who actually lives down by Carmarthen and came from Towie, may be able to come and help. So she's doing a lot of work with our youth program at the moment, class coach. She might be able to come down and do something with you guys.
Okay.
But if not, I would like to be able to come in after Commonwealth Games as well, to maybe do some stuff with the clubs and get a bit more involved.
Okay. So yeah, well, yeah, Simon, I'll
Simon, get in touch with Mark, and then perhaps we can arrange Amy to get down there and
yeah.
do something.
Yeah, Amy's doing a lot of coaching at the moment, and as a sprinter
So
as well.
Amy Cole, she used to be one of the riders on our program. She's
world champion.
World champion in tandem as well. So yeah, someone I can strongly recommend to come and deliver some coaching.
There we go. Yeah, I'm sure we can arrange that. I'm sure she'd be up for doing something like that. So yeah, we'll look at that for you, Simon. A big heart. There we go. And what's the bet? Is it Tuesday's track night? I think so at Towie. The fixed wheel stuff, isn't it? We can
Tuesday track or even a freewheel Saturday.
Oh yeah, we could change it. I'm sure you could all ride track bikes if you've got a sprint coach coming down anyway for that day. So okay, we'll explore that, Simon. Definitely, if that's something that you think would be beneficial.
Absolutely.
Cheers, man. Okay, right, we are going to end the call. Everyone happy with that? Yeah. So yeah, great. Thanks for all for attending. Well, I don't know what I've done now. Boo. Okay, I'm just going to end the call. Thanks, guys, for attending. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Yeah.